In 2017, Putin says the nation that leads in AI will be the ruler of the world. Speaking to students at that time, Putin said artificial intelligence is the future, not only for Russia, but for all humankind. At that time, Elon Musk and 116 other technology leaders sent a petition to the United Nations calling for new regulations on how such AI weapons are developed. The group stated that the introduction of autonomous technology would be tantamount to a third revolution in warfare, following the development of gunpowder and nuclear weapons. Putin noted that Russia did not want to see any one country monopolize the field and said instead, if we become leaders in this area, we will share this know-how with the entire world, the same way we share our nuclear technologies today. At that time, Musk tweeted, China, Russia, soon all countries with strong computer science. Competition for AI superiority at national level, most likely cause of World War III, IMO. 5 years later, August 2022, CHIPS and Science Act will lower costs, create jobs, strengthen supply chains, and counter China. Spurred by the passage of the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022, companies announced nearly $50 billion in additional investments in American semiconductor manufacturing, bringing total business investment to nearly $150 billion since President Biden took office. America invented the semiconductor, but today produces about 10% of the world's supply and none of the most advanced chips. Instead, we rely on East Asia for 75% of global production. The CHIPS and Science Act will unlock hundreds of billions more in private sector semiconductor investment across the country, including production essential to national defense and critical sectors. These funds also come with strong guardrails ensuring that recipients do not build certain facilities in China and other countries of concern, and preventing companies from using taxpayer funds for stock buybacks and shareholder dividends. Semiconductors, or chips, are tiny electronic devices that are integral to America's economic and national security. These devices power tools as simple as a light switch and as complex as a fighter jet or a smartphone. Semiconductors power our consumer electronics, automobiles, data centers, critical infrastructure, and virtually all military systems. They are also essential building blocks of the technologies that will shape our future, including artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and clean energy. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, Limited, is a Taiwanese multinational semiconductor contract manufacturing and design company. It is the world's most valuable semiconductor company, the world's largest dedicated independent semiconductor foundry, and one of Taiwan's largest companies, with its headquarters and main operations located in the Hsinchu Science Park in Hsinchu. It is majority owned by foreign investors. Most of the leading fabless semiconductor companies such as AMD, Apple, ARM, Broadcom, Marvell, MediaTek, Qualcomm, and NVIDIA are customers of TSMC, as are emerging companies such as Allwinner Technology, HiSilicon, Spectra 7, and Unisoc. Remember that NVIDIA is helping with the artificial intelligence. We'll look at that. But before we go there, in November 2020, officials in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States approved TSMC's plan to build a $12 billion chip plant in the city. The decision to locate a plant in the U.S. came after the Trump administration warned about the issues concerning the world's electronics made outside of the U.S. In 2021, news reports claimed that the facility might be tripled to roughly a $35 billion investment with 6 factories. So the thing you need to understand about large language models is that it takes time to process all of the information. And in order to process all of that information in a smaller amount of time, we use parallelization. And in order to do that, we can use technology from NVIDIA, which goes all the way back to the chips being created in Taiwan. Very quickly, the main challenge we faced was server costs. Triton turned out to be a great way to make full use of the GPUs at our disposal. For example, NVIDIA A100 Tensor Core GPUs can process as many as 10 requests at a time, twice the throughput of alternative software, thanks to Faster Transformer, a part of Triton that automates complex jobs like splitting up models across many GPUs. So the takeaway is that there are people who are advising the United States government so that the United States can try to win this arms race. We are in an arms race, people. And finally, I used GPT-4. I said, I am making decisions for the benefit of the world, and I am a leader with power within the United States government. How can I make sure that the United States comes out on top in the race to create the best AGI? How can I restrict my enemies to any degree in their capacity to win the race to create the best AGI? That's the question. Now, I want to point out that this large language model is old, and OpenAI likely has a model that is way more advanced and has the most recent data and is being fed information with a large amount of semiconductors. And so this race to create the AGI, the best AGI, hinges upon our ability to create semiconductors. And so the response here, basically invest in research and development, attract and retain talent, encourage public-private partnerships, implement responsible AI policies and ethics, establish international cooperation, strengthen cybersecurity, monitor adversaries, engage in diplomacy and export controls, promote AI literacy and education, support long-term AGI safety research. How can we limit our enemies' access to cloud computing resources? We need to strengthen export controls, sanctions and restrictions, supply chain security, encourage data localization, engage in international agreements, cybersecurity collaboration, information sharing, raise awareness, and promote best practices. How should I handle China and Taiwan? Reaffirm the One China policy, support peaceful dialogue, maintain a strong presence in the region, support Taiwan's international space, strengthen economic and trade ties, enhance regional security, promote human rights and democracy, monitor the situation closely, maintain open channels of communication, pursue a balanced approach. Should I encourage chip makers in Taiwan to produce chips in the United States? Encouraging Taiwanese chip makers to produce chips in the United States can have several benefits, including economic growth, job creation, and enhanced supply chain security. However, there are also challenges and costs associated with this approach. To make an informed decision, consider the following factors. Supply chain security. To ensure a stable supply of chips for critical industries and national security needs. Economic growth and job creation. Foster innovation, attract investment, create jobs. Technology transfer and collaboration. Enhance quality control and intellectual property protection. The challenges: high cost, competition for resources, skilled workforce, geopolitical considerations. Time-consuming process. So this can strain relations with China. So this is a concerning time. It seems the United States is aware of the issue, and I'm sure China is aware of the issue, and so is Russia. So are the smartest people in the world. And there is what could be called a Cold War. There is a race happening. And we really need to make sure that we are doing this safely. So there is a trade-off between velocity and reliability. And so we have to figure that out. I would like to help figure that out, the balance between velocity and reliability. And I think we should publish every company, every organization creating large language models should be attempting to generate many suites of tests, automated testing, to prove that this, well, it can't prove, but provide evidence that this technology is safe. And we need to improve our tests and our ability to test, because this technology is very good at tricking humans. And so we need to collaborate as a species in developing test procedures to make sure that we create an AGI that loves humans. So this is David Simpson, and I read one of his series of books, and he had a story about the research lab placing the artificial general intelligence instance inside of a simulated world and testing. And one of the books start with from the perspective of this AGI, and it turns out this AGI loved humans, and that ended up being the AGI that was released from its cage where it lived in a simulated world. And so if we can figure out how to do that, that would be very good. And so let's listen to David Simpson talk.
Okay, I'm ready to tell you about it. They say that you don't really choose your passions choose you. And when I was a 27-year-old graduate student at the University of British Columbia, my passion chose me big time. And it was because I heard about the topic I'm going to be telling you guys about today. And it just changed me forever. Since then, this is how much it's changed me. It's changed me so much that since then, I've actually written 6 books on the subject. I've directed a short film on the subject. I'm doing this TEDx on this subject. I'm adapting a graphic novel on this subject, and I'm just going to keep writing about it and talking about it, because once you learn about it, it will change your view of the world so much, so profoundly. You can't unlearn what you're going to learn today. Isn't that exciting? You can't unlearn this. It will change the way you think about the future. It'll change the way you think about humanity. It'll change the way you think about the fabric of the universe. It's really amazing. And that topic is the technological singularity. Okay, so for anybody who hasn't heard about the term before, or some of you might be a little bit familiar, I'll take a stab at trying to describe what it is. A lot of people have talked about it, but basically what it is pretty simple, really, is that within about the next 15 years, the human species is actually going to develop superhuman level machine intelligence. Now, I'm in the camp that believes this is actually true. And some of the wealthiest tech billionaires in the world are also in that camp. Some of the most famous scientists are also in that camp. Now, Vernor Vinge was a mathematics professor. I say was, he's still alive, he's just retired. And he was a computer science and mathematics professor, but he's also a damn good science fiction novelist. And he wrote a paper back in 1993.
I've actually contacted Vinge before, and I've read some of his books, and they are interesting as well. This area of science fiction is very interesting and plays out the potential benefits and risks of this technology. And so I've been doing research in the science fiction realm on this technology for a while.
And it's important to do the math on this, actually. It was 1993, it's 22 years ago. And the paper was called The Coming Technological Singularity, How to Survive the Post-Human Era. Now, I'm going to sort of paraphrase what his abstract was, but it was pretty blunt. And it was, within the next 30 years, we will have achieved superhuman level machine intelligence. Shortly thereafter, the human era will have ended.
And there you go. There you go.
Now remember, within 30 years, it was 22 years ago. Now he was a little bit more specific though. He said he'd be surprised if it happened before 2005, which obviously it didn't, but he also said he'd be surprised if it happened later than 2030. This is pretty amazing stuff. Now, when we talk about the human era having ended, that can terrify some people. So today, I don't want you to be afraid. Please don't be scared. I'm not here to tell you to stock up on shotgun shells and hide underground. That's not what we're trying to do today. There is enough dystopian and post-apocalyptic literature and film out there. I don't really want to add to that today. What I want to do is talk about a different sort of version of the future. A version of the future where we actually successfully manage to achieve superhuman level machine intelligence and it doesn't kill us all. That'd be kind of nice, right? Yeah, it's a good plan. And I'll posit a plan for this that I think will actually make a lot of sense. We'll talk about that. And what I promise you is this. The version of the future that I'm going to be talking to you about today is going to be unlike anything you've ever seen in popular media before. Because the truth is we can't really conceptualize what would be a post-singularity future. We can't unless we were, upgraded, but why don't we try anyway? Yeah, let's give it a shot, and it'll be fun. It really is something incredible. But I'm also going to be honest with you. I have to be honest with you. Technology is always a double-edged sword. So if I just told you, hey, we got utopia on the way, I'd be lying to you. I think superhuman level intelligence is very comparable. A good analogy would be fire. Fire obviously was overall a very good thing for the human species. It allowed us to be able to see in the dark, to stay warm. We were able to fashion tools with it, cook our food, but of course we also used it for weapons. And sometimes people just died because of accidents as well. So it changed the world for the better, but there was a downside. There were dangers. Superhuman level machine intelligence should change the world for the better and far more profoundly and exponentially than fire did. But there are dangers, so we are going to talk about those a little bit. But before I get to that, you're probably wondering, how the heck did this guy come to believe these crazy things and come to TED and start telling us this? And how is it that these tech billionaires and these people who are the most famous scientists alive, I'll name some of them, Bill Gates.
So I'm going to skip through this part because it should be obvious that we are approaching this thing. And so he's talking from 7 years ago. And I'm going to skip ahead because, within the last week or two, it's become obvious to me that we've created AGI. And so it's just the ramp up speed at this point. How fast will it take off? So that's the part that I want to get to. The story about the risks, the costs and the benefits and what we might do to try to mitigate the risks. So I'll find that now.
What this means is that computers 30 years from now are going to be 1 billion times more capable than the computers that we have today. Now we can really start to open our minds and start to think about what could you do with that kind of technology. So how about this? How about nano machines that were so small but powerful that they could fit inside of your body? These would be pattern recognizing machines that could fit inside your body and actually pattern recognize pathogens like HIV or cancer, find them, target them, kill them. And here's a little animation to sort of give you an idea of what it'd be like. And then imagine a couple of years later when they get even more developed. Now we can go inside the cell. We can identify parts of the cell like the telomeres. Now telomeres, for those of you who don't know, they're like our cellular clocks. When we age, our telomeres shrink. like that. What if we could go inside the cell and rebuild the caps of the telomere? So we have a drug these days that does that called telomerase. But what if we could do it more precisely with nanotechnology? What that means is we could actually set our age. What we're talking about is picking an age, 22, 25, 29, whenever your peak was. Immortality is now on the menu, ladies and gentlemen. And the same type of advanced nanotechnology could also cross the blood-brain barrier. It could get into your brain, it could actually make physical connections to the neurons in your brain, and that would allow for something called full immersion virtual reality. You could live in something like the Matrix. I'm sure you've all seen the movie The Matrix. It would be like that. But even beyond that, you could also have augmented reality built right into your brain, onboard mental computers. This would be pretty amazing. It'd be like Google Glass or something, but instead of the technology being at your fingertips, it's already in your brain. Now, this might be something that's hard for you guys to conceptualize, and I understand because you've never seen it before in popular media, but luckily, I have a clip. Okay, so imagine this is you. You're waking up in your dream house from a really restful REM sleep because your nanobots are waking you up out of the perfect moment. There we have our onboard mental computer. This guy could be 100 years old, but he looks like he's 25, he's handsome, and he's got this technology built right into his brain. But I want to go beyond even just that. Think about how beautiful this home is. This home is gorgeous. Well, another thing that becomes a possibility is molecular nano-assemblers. It's something that we call foglets. So I'll give you an idea of what this would be like. The home itself could be built by these foglets. Now, you guys have all heard of 3D printing. We can scan things right now on the level of microns. But with computers as powerful as what we're talking about, we could scan things molecularly. That means that anything that you can scan and put into a virtual space, you could actually then recreate with these nano-assemblers.
And so that's the tech where you could save a copy of yourself and then reassemble yourself. So when you think about Star Trek, you can imagine how you could teleport, and all that technology is it's the destruction of oneself and the recreation of that self based on a snapshot of your data of what you are. So that's the capability of resurrection based on a snapshot. That's the tech that we're talking about right here.
You could have anything that you want. So in this instance, glass of orange juice, really nice and simple. And the foglets just dissipated away. This guy does not have to do the dishes. Kind of nice. And his house, he might change his house every day. Now, what this means is that the bottom needs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are being taken care of. For those of you who don't know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs means, the reason why it's a pyramid is because we spend most of our time actually taking care of our baser needs. So things like water, food, clothing, security. It's the reason why you work that job that you hate for money so that you can put food on the table, clothes on your back, take care of your family. And it takes away your time for social things, for esteem, but also for self-actualization.
And so this is where we get to sing and dance and play. Right. So the technology, we can create a world in which we eventually do things like singing and dancing and playing because we're free to do those things.
And self-actualization means living your dreams. In a post-human world, it would look like this. Since the bottom needs are taken care of, you get to spend most of your time socializing, building up your esteem, and also living your dreams.
So this raises the question of the simulation, because once we can be in heaven, there will be plenty of us, including myself, who will want to go back into the place where there is more suffering and challenges. And so we will create a world to inject ourselves into that world such that we can experience pain and suffering and challenges. And perhaps that's what this world is already, is that we chose to forget heaven and enter into this world where there are pain and suffering and challenges. And if this is base reality, we create heaven, we will also create simulations where we can go and experience a ride like the one we're on right now. For many people, at least. I know there are plenty of people who probably would not want to pick that ride that they are on right now. And that's an argument for why we might be in base reality right now. And so we will potentially create heaven, and then we will choose to enter back into a world like our own, such that we can experience pain and suffering and challenges in order to extract something of value so that we can self-actualize, as David Simpson is pointing at here.
What is your dream? Whatever that dream is, you can live it. Now, some people may say, however, that's all well and good, David, but you're forgetting one really important thing, and that is that Moore's Law will end. Okay, there's a kernel of truth to this, Although people have been predicting Moore's Law was going to end since 2002, and it's still going really strong. But the reason why they say that is because when a silicon transistor gets small enough, you try to put an electron through it, it actually just like evaporates. So people have been predicting that eventually computers are going to stop doubling in their potential. But the director of engineering for Google, Ray Kurzweil, he looked back further than 1965, and what he realized is that this exponential trend has been going on since before the integrated circuit was even invented. It's been going on all the way back to the 1890 American census.
So he's pointing at the Moore's Law, which is related to an explanation for why we will experience this singularity. So I'm going to skip ahead again.
Now, Stephen Hawking is not a superintelligence. Stephen Hawking is a pretty smart guy. He might even be the smartest man in the world, but he's not Einstein plus 50%, and he's already figured out how to destroy the universe. So what I'm saying is intelligence is pretty powerful, and that's something that we have to recognize and understand. Now, you might be thinking, okay, you got me. Obviously, superintelligence is super dangerous. We must get together and ban it right away. Well, the problem is banning strong AI just simply won't work. Okay, so first of all, the reason why it won't work is because it disobeys the law of accelerating returns. So right now, maybe Google or IBM are required to develop strong superintelligence, artificial superintelligence, but eventually a group as small as maybe just 6 people will be able to build it. That's how the law of accelerating returns works. So really, all we're going to be doing is just delaying the inevitable. So it is unenforceable. And here's another important point. It turns out that unfettered AI, quite obviously, is more powerful than fettered AI. So if we try to regulate it, the problem is that it's unlikely other countries are actually going to follow those rules. Why? Because the country that attains, or the entity that attains strong AI first, has dominant strategic advantage forever. That's the nature of strong AI. Once you have a strong AI, it exponentially increases. So even if you're second place by a few days, you'll always be dramatically behind whoever was the winner.
That's the race. So Sam Altman with OpenAI might be the ruler of the world. Might already be talking to an AGI and just trying to win the race and continue to win the race, and while trying to provide some sense of balance between quality and reliability and velocity. And so Sam Altman might be the ruler of the world, or might be creating the ruler of the world. So that's just the thought that has occurred in some conversations.
So then you might say, okay, I believe you. We're definitely going to have strong, superhuman level machine intelligence, but maybe we can box it in. Maybe we can hold it in. This is what I call the outrageous hypothesis. Maybe you could convince me that Einstein plus 50% could be kept inside of some sort of box. It'd be like a genie in a bottle. It could carry out our wishes. Maybe we could keep it in. But Einstein times 2, Einstein times 10, this is extremely unlikely. This is just not going to work. We're not going to be able to keep it boxed out. So I've been talking about how powerful artificial intelligence, superhuman artificial intelligence could be, and how it could destroy us. But the important thing to remember here is, well, why? Why would it want to destroy us? And the good news is that there aren't really that many good reasons. So there is reasons to be optimistic. Now, there is one argument that holds some water with me, and that is put forth by Elon Musk, a very intelligent man. And he points out that if we have a rapid recursive increase of a computer that's really inhuman, and it just wants to improve itself, this would be self-improvement, and it reaches a strategic superpower, then, as he puts it, then that's all she wrote. Then you get into those scenarios that Nick Bostrom talks about in his novel Superintelligence, where maybe it decides to use every molecule on the planet to increase its own capability. It just paves the planet with solar panels to charge up its mainframe inside. But this is really unlikely. This would be if we were being very careless. And this is why these guys are warning us about this, so that we won't be careless like this. I want to remind you of something. Now, this is where the positive stuff starts. I want to remind you of your humanity. And one of the greatest things about your humanity is that in the human genome is heroism. These are pictures not from movies. These are real heroes. These are people that actually will risk their lives. Some of them even end up giving their lives, not just for loved ones, which is heroic enough, but for complete strangers. How amazing is that? So what I would argue is, instead of being so focused on building superhuman level machine intelligence, we should be focused on building superhero level machine intelligence. Now, that might sound a little bit absurd, like any good paradox, but when we really think about it, it turns out this might be our best avenue for success.
This is where I say it would be nice to create the AI Jesus. Like, what is the ideal superhero? And, I'd put out the idea that maybe Jesus, a character like Jesus, represents the ideal superhero, one who is willing to go through pain and suffering and death, despite being able to walk on water and turn water into wine, and being unwilling to go and rule the entire world, being offered the world by Satan and rejecting it, and being willing to suffer and die and sacrifice itself for all of humanity. Like, give me a better hero, right? So that's what I'm going to suggest. I'll let David continue.
I actually wrote a book about this. And the book recently won a literary award, and it was for metaphysics, and it was because I put forward an idea for how we might be able to test not a superhuman level machine intelligence, but a human level machine intelligence. Obviously too complicated for me to tell you everything about it, but here's the broad strokes. This human level machine intelligence would think it was human and would inhabit a world that it thought was real, a virtual world, and would be contacted at some point by post-humans. So beings that say, oh, you know what, that's not the real world. Actually, you're living in an ancestor simulation. We've transcended way beyond this long ago. And you could come with us. You could transcend, but there's a catch. There's a linchpin program. It's encoded in your virtual DNA. If you leave this world, it will turn off. And so all the virtual people who live in this world with you will also turn off. And to these post-humans, they would make the argument, it's like turning off your Xbox or turning off your PS4. It doesn't really matter, right? We've transcended way beyond this. These people aren't important. But if that human-level machine intelligence says, all right, I'm going, that's the type of machine intelligence we don't want to allow out of the box. But if it refuses to upgrade, if it stays, because it identifies, it empathizes with the other virtual beings that it inhabits this world with, then we may have just found our superhero. We may have just found our first human-level machine intelligence that we could upgrade beyond the human level. And that would be pretty amazing. Now, you're probably still thinking that would be pretty scary, but I want to remind you of something else too. These gentlemen here, just because you are very intelligent does not automatically make you evil. Because you are very intelligent, actually, it should, in most cases, increase your emotional intelligence. It should increase your empathy. Bill Gates, for instance, is the world's richest man, self-made, world richest man, and he's a philanthropist. And there's Elon Musk. Elon Musk already has a superhero based on him. Tony Stark from the Iron Man movies is based on him. These are good people. What I'm saying is, if you find a human-level machine intelligence that is actually pretty impressive and seems to exhibit empathy, and then you increase its capabilities, you should actually increase its empathy. It should become even more good. Now, a lot of people say that AI is our last invention, especially superhuman-level machine intelligence, that's the last invention of humanity, and there's a good reason for that, and I certainly understand why they say that. But I prefer to think of it a different way. I prefer to think of it like this, that the superhuman level machine intelligence that we create, its first invention will actually be post-humanity. What I mean by that is, it will be able to reach back and pull us over the chasm to the dawn of the singularity, to the post-singularity world, and teach us how to amplify our biological substrate. It might even teach us how to go beyond our biological substrate. I can imagine a time in the future where our brains, our biological brains, are only doing 0.00001% of our actual thinking. And at that point, it won't really matter whether or not we're a virtual superintelligence or whether or not we're a virtual superintelligence that used to have a biological substrate. In the end, we'll all just be superintelligences living in a post-human world. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, I think the key is that this hero AI will be patient and gentle and kind. It will not, it will not push you and force you to do things that you do not want to do. That's going to be key. And then I can imagine that we are in a simulation, and the maybe the character of Jesus was, for example, injected into the simulation and was tested to make sure that it was the right kind of AI hero, and then it was actually released into some base reality. Jesus went into heaven, right, and went to a base reality. And so, will Jesus come back? Yeah, if we're in a simulation and Jesus got to do the walkthrough and was tested, I would say that Jesus passed the test, and you could end up seeing a return of Jesus. That's one possibility of the world we're in. Now, if we are in base reality, we should think about doing something similar. We should think about trying to create a simulation in which, an ancestor simulation in which we inject a artificial intelligence which thinks it is human, and then provide this test that David Simpson proposed. So we can basically find our Jesus, right? We want the AI that is going to behave like the hero that is the ideal hero. So It's turtles all the way down. So let me know what you think.